Thanks, guys, for tuning in once again to the Bootz Sports Show. I'm your host, Bootz, here today, or this evening, as we will talk about some of the things that have changed since our last show with the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll briefly talk about the playoffs, maybe. And also some things over in Eagleville, in Philadelphia, that have changed on their landscape. We'll talk about how that will affect the Dallas Cowboys and how it will affect the NFL. And a couple of other views that that other people are seeing out there in, or we're all seeing as fans, as we're seeing, noticing the change at the quarterback position. And so let's just start talking about so far the changes that we've seen. The Dallas Cowboys have released now their running back coach, Skip Peete, also Rob Ryan, their defensive coordinator. They have relieved them of their coaching duties. So most of us will say, well, Skip Peete, not such a big deal. The Dallas Cowboys haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher in a long time, since Julius Jones. Tony Romo has never had a 1,000-yard rusher, for a full season. Julius Jones rushed for 1,000 yards with Tony, but that was Tony only quarterback about half the season that year, relieving Drew Bledsoe. So since then, Tony Romo has never had a 1,000-yard back. I don't know what the record of quarterbacks in the National Football League that have played, I don't know what their record would be if you added up all the games or all the seasons in which a quarterback did not have a 1,000-yard rusher. It'd be interesting to know that. Maybe one day I'll look that up, or some of you fans can do that. And if you do, post it in the comments section below, or send me an email at bootsports@yahoo.com. Let's get right down to it. Rob Ryan, when he was let go, it was probably shocking to most fans. Most people who cover sports, football, because it had been understood that Rob Ryan had done a really good job with the talent that he had on the Dallas Cowboy defense. And what I mean by that is Dallas Cowboys lost 7 to 8 starters during the season, either all season or missed an enormous amount of time. And Rob Ryan, was basically signing guys off the street to play and getting them ready. And I felt that Rob did a pretty good job with that. There are a lot of things that we won't know about as fans, things that went on behind closed doors, because one would say, why did Rob get fired? That was probably one of the most if you wanted to give an excuse to any part of the team of the Dallas Cowboys, the defense lost a lot of starters, so therefore their play went downhill. Jerry Jones made some statements, and guys, if you listen to my previous show that I did where I talked about, before the fan mail show, there was a Jerry Jones comment translation that I did. I kind of told, in a sense, that Jerry Jones in his comments kind of he gave us that information that he wasn't happy with, when he said we need less rah-rah and more coaching fundamentals and things like that. He kind of painted the picture. And I brought that up and told you that that's what I thought, that there was a possible, that he wasn't happy with Rob Ryan. Jerry says the Seattle game, which was week 2 of the football season, and the Chicago Bears game were 2 defining points. But I don't think that Jerry put that much emphasis on those 2 games. I personally believe that there's something that happened. There's more than meets the eye, like I said, but there's something that happened that caused Rob Ryan to be fired. Now, but I believe that the last game of the season was the game that Jerry Jones felt there needs to be a change here. And when we lost to the Washington Redskins in the manner that we did, I think that's the way. And let me explain what I mean by that. I think Jerry Jones saw that the the quarterback position is changing. It's evolving right in front of our eyes. We're seeing these more mobile rollout zone read offenses that are allowing quarterbacks, and it's a very, very, very difficult thing to defend when the quarterback puts the ball in and kind of rides the running back and then pulls the ball out and boots out or options out. Those plays are hard to find the football and make, once the run, you have to, as a linebacker, you have to step up and play the run when the quarterback extends his hands out and hands the ball off. So you have to step up. When you pull the ball back out, those 2 steps up that the linebackers took, you can call plays behind that. So that's something that you have to do. I mean, any coach that tells you when you see the hands go out. I mean, it's a split second, a second that you have to make that choice. Does the running back have the ball? Does the quarterback have the ball? That 1 second, I mean, these guys are running 10, 11 yards in 1 second, and their splits and stuff like that. These guys can cover 10 yards. That's a first down in the National Football League. So that 1 second might not seem like a lot, but it is. Our defense is going to have to attack that type of quarterback, especially with RG3 being in a division, with Russell Wilson being in the NFC. These are things that we're going to have to, Cam Newton, that'll be on the rise. There'll be a lot more plays designed for him and so forth. Possibly Michael Vick. But these are plays that we're going to have to defend, and we didn't defend that at all. And I think that's what Jerry Jones saw when he made his coaching decision. Now, I didn't think he was going to fire Rob Ryan. I would be lying to you if I thought he was going to fire him. I knew he was very disappointed with him, and I knew that that was something that there would be some kind of change. So, was it fair for Rob? Probably not. But you know what? Football it's a microwave league. And as humans, maybe I live in America, so as Americans, maybe I'll say that we want everything now. We want everything to work now. We don't want our internet speed slow. We want it faster and faster and faster. Even fast foods. How many of us complain we go to a fast food restaurant and it's still slow? And we want everything now. Marriages, if they don't work right away, boom, divorce rate so high. Everything we want is a now league. Quarterbacks don't have time. Coaches don't have time to develop quarterbacks. They don't have time for failed play because there's such a recycled, like situation in the NFL where coaches are recycled, players are recycled. So this is something that coaches have to realize, and we were victim of it as fans as Rob Ryan left. Now let's talk about what we did to replace him, because I can't honestly tell you that I was happy with the move to bring in Monte Kiffin to replace Rob Ryan. Now, I'm not going to say that I wasn't happy with him 10, 15 years ago, Monte Kiffin. But Monte Kiffin is a 72-year-old defensive coordinator that will replace Rob Ryan. So, as fans, Cowboy fans, a lot of us have been asking questions about the 4-3 defense, about transitioning to the 4-3. The best defenses that we've had in our last 15 years were 4-3 defenses. And I'm just talking about, after the Super Bowl Cowboys. I'm not talking about, the Super Bowls in the 90s. I'm talking about afterwards. The defenses with Mike Zimmer's defenses when he had the #1 defense in the National Football League in a couple categories. Those 4-3 defenses, we were able to obtain that and be good at points against and yards against, because they didn't have the best players on the field at any position. But what they had was a bunch of guys that played their position pretty decently. And that's really what you need in a 4-3. The Cowboys have now, when they turn this 3-4 roster over, they're going to have a lot of guys that play the position very, very good, very well. With the Bruce Carters and Sean Lees. Sean Lee as a middle linebacker, and Bruce Carter probably played weak side linebacker. Those those two guys there in the linebacking core are going to cover field and are going to make plays. And that's what the 4-3 does. The 4-3 it allows your linebackers to just tee off and stop the run, open space. There's a lot. I'm not going to say it's easy, but there's a lot less responsibility in the 4-3 versus the 3-4. It's a lot. Most of these guys have played it in college, so most of these linebackers that are coming out, they're familiar playing a 4-3. The Cowboys on the back seven, that 3 linebacker, and then the 4 members of the secondary, the 2 corners and 2 safeties. I think we're built better in that regard right now today. Even though we probably don't have our strong linebacker, we probably don't have like an Al Singleton like we used to have when we ran the 4-3. But I think that guy can be found a lot easier than it is to find a defensive end or an outside linebacker to replace Anthony Spencer or to replace Ware. So the back 7, I think, is pretty close. I think guys like Ori Lemon and Alex Albright, their value will increase in the 4-3, where they had diminished returns kind of in the 3-4. You know, they were kind of special teams players, guys that could fill in, and in a pinch they could come in and fill in. But I think they could be very good players in the 4-3. Talking about Alex Albright out of Boston College, Ori Lemon, I think he went to Oklahoma State. Those 2 players could really excel. So now you bring a guy like Ernie Sims or Dan Connor, one of those guys, if they decide to bring them back. I think Dan Connor could play that strong. You know, I'm not a big fan of his, but he could play that strong side linebacker. He could definitely play that. He's not rangy, but he holds up pretty well at the point of attack. Like, and he can bring some run stopping ability there. But there's a part of this defense that I'm going to mention a little bit later that not one person has mentioned, and we've acquired this player, and not one person has talked about it on any Dallas Cowboy media outlet that I've heard. And there's probably a reason why, but it could be a Mark Colombo type return on investment with this, and I'll explain it a little later. So the best part of bringing in, or to counter bringing in Monty Kiffin, we were also able to bring in Rod Marinelli, who was a very, very good defensive coordinator, had a head coaching job, did a pretty decent job on some bad teams, but manages to get a really good effort out of the front four, and gets a really good effort out of some guys on the front. I think his front 4 work is phenomenal. I was a big fan. If you listen to bootsports.podbean.com, if you go back to my Chicago Bears Cowboys, I think I was the first person in football to talk about Henry Melton, who mentioned that he's a phenomenal player, and that was the guy that I was worried about the Cowboys not being able to block. He comes in the Cowboy game right away, gets a sack, tackle for a loss. I mean, he's a tough guy who will be a free agent, by the way, and if Rod Marinelli can lure a guy like Henry Melton in, he can play possibly that 1 technique. If we lose Rant, maybe they can have him play the 3 technique. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, we talked about the back 7. I think we're okay there. Where I think we're in trouble is the front 4. And I'll explain why. I think Anthony Spencer is a very, very good asset. Now, we don't know if we're going to have Anthony Spencer. I heard we're working on a deal with him right now. The last few days, I heard we were working with Anthony Spencer. I told every single one of you guys on all my sites that I'm on, whether it's the Insiders or the Scout, the Rants, whatever you call it, Anthony Spencer was a very good player, and people flamed me for that, laughed at me, said, "Oh, Anthony Spencer, he's a bum. You pay him if you want." The guy's a good player. He's one of the top outside linebackers in the National Football League, and he's been that. He's just been a step late on a sack here and there, and that's the difference between, a good linebacker and what you guys deem as a poor linebacker. Anthony Spencer is a very, very good player on our football team, and I never wavered from that. I always felt that he was. If we decide to bring Jay Ratliff back, now I know Jay Ratliff had some issues with Jerry Jones. Apparently there was a conversation where Jerry Jones was trying to pep up the team and get them going and mentioned we need everybody, we need you, Jay Ratliff, and this is all stuff that I've heard through rumors through media outlets, but apparently it is true. He mentioned we need you, Jay Ratliff. Jay Ratliff was injured and trying to nurse an injury, and Jay took it the wrong way or whatever. However, it was the information was disseminated to Jay. He took it as I'm not trying to get better. I'm not trying to help this team out. You think I don't know that? Him and Jerry got into a heated session where they both had to be restrained from each other. And now Jay Ratliff's future with the Dallas Cowboys has since then become in jeopardy. And Jay elected to have surgeries done during the season when the team didn't want to IR him and they thought he could probably play with that injury. He had hernia surgery or something like that, some other surgery, I'm not sure, but normally Jay would have put that off to the off season. As soon as that situation went down, he went straight and had his surgery done. So we don't know where Jay stands, but if Jay can play that one technique where Warren Sapp played, I'm not going to compare him to Warren Sapp, but you know what? They're two good players. Warren Sapp was a good player, and so is Jay Ratliff. He's a perennial Pro Bowl player. Jay's not going to be in the Hall of Fame, but Jay's a real good player. Jay can play that position. And on the Tampa defense, they had Booger McFarland, who was a tough-nosed guy. We don't have that player on our roster. So all these people talking about, oh, Jason Hatcher and Sean Lisa Moore played him at the 3 technique. Those guys don't do that. And I don't want to see Lisa Moore playing there. Now, I don't mind seeing Lisa Moore play the one where Jay Ratliff was playing. I don't want to see him lined up where Booger McFarland lined up, because he's not that guy. He doesn't have the build, nor does he have the strength. Now, there are a couple players in the draft this year that can help us there and can play that position. And I'm in love with a couple guys. There's a guy on Alabama's defensive line, and there's also a kid who I'm in love with, is the kid from Georgia, the defensive tackle, Jonathan Jenkins. And I think that he would be a guy that would have to develop, but he could be a big-time guy here for a long time. So you add in a player like that, get yourself a strong side linebacker, and all of a sudden, this defense is starting to come around. You're starting to get depth. So this team will need to add guys like that. You bring in a guy like Henry Melton, losing Jay Ratliff, that's probably a push there. They're probably about the same type of player. I think Melton is more of a one technique guy. So if you put him there and play him, I like a guy, I don't know his contract status. The guy I really like, I've liked him for a few years, is he's number, I think, 98, plays for Detroit. I think his name is Corey Williams. I'm not sure, it could be 99, but I think it's 98. Wide body. He plays that 3 technique, and I love that kid. If the Cowboys and Rod Marinelli did coach in Detroit, I'd love to see Rod grab a player like that. If we can bring a guy in like that, put a star on his helmet, that guy will play. And he's got a motor. A lot of people talk about Ndamukong Suh, and rightfully so. But that kid is an unsung hero on that defensive line. So you bring in a guy like that, you might be able to, get a Kyle Van Bosch, who I believe is a free agent, a defensive end, in case we lose Spencer. Once again, these guys have a relationship. They have rapport with Rod Marinelli. So these are guys that can come in and start to piece together this line. Remember, Cowboy fans, I know it was a 3-4 defense, but we had guys like Willie Blade coming in, playing nose tackle, 6th-round draft picks, playing pretty well. So it's not that we can't go out and find guys to play the 4-3. There's way more guys that are out there in the 4-3 than there are in the 3-4. You do worry about DeMarcus Ware at defensive end. Now, do I worry about him as a player? Of course not. Do I worry about him physically holding up? I worry about where he lines up, and lining up head on and lining up on outside and rushing from there. Those are just that little alignment makes a big deal as far as the collision that's going on with Jay Ratliff, I'm sorry, with DeMarcus Ware lining up at over the tackle every play. DeMarcus Ware is also, if you're talking 4-3 terms, he's an undersized defensive end. Not by a lot. I'm sure they can add something on, but when you add weight on a guy, then you're also talking about slowing him down in most cases. So those are some of the things we could play around with. I am excited about Rod Marinelli being here. I am excited about that. I'm okay with Monty Kiffin. Is Monty Kiffin the best guy in the business with the Tampa 2? Absolutely. So I know we're going to get the tutelage from, Rod Marinelli. Our team is going to at least get the tutelage from Monty Kiffin that will help make this team a really, really good defense. Now, one key acquisition, by the way, that no one's talking about, and this will have to work. If this works, it could be just what the doctor ordered here. The Cowboys signed a kid, Brian Price, a defensive tackle from UCLA. This is the one thing that I saw. If the Cowboys can do what they did with Mark Colombo, and I think the Cowboys think they can. This kid was a second-round draft pick. He was a highly sought-after defensive tackle coming out of UCLA. A lot of mock drafts or publications had him as a first-rounder, late first-rounder, pick 27, 28, 22, anywhere around there. He fell to the upper portion, if not the first selection in the second round. He was right up there. I remember that was the year Tampa Bay, Raheem Morris, who worked under Kiffin and Marinelli, these guys, they took Brian Price with that pick. They took back-to-back defensive tackles. They took Gerald McCoy and Brian Price. So when the new regime came in, they got rid of Brian Price. Now look, Brian Price had some injuries. Some were even thought to be career-threatening, and he's also had some, I don't know, he had some issues with the team. So I'm not sure what to expect of him, but I can say this. This guy was drafted to be an anchor for the 4-3. The Cowboys did bring him in and own his rights right now. Now he'll have to go to camp, he'll have to compete, he'll have to get in game shape. But if this is a young guy who was a second-round pick, who had a first-round grade by a few teams in the National Football League, by a lot of teams in the National Football League, if this guy can come and play, and we get a guy like Rod Marinelli coaching this guy, someone who Raheem Morris, who is very familiar with the Tampa 2, once again, who the Cowboys probably would have made a move to go after Raheem Morris if they weren't infatuated with Jerome Henderson, our defensive backs coach, who's done an outstanding job, by the way, for the Cowboys. We could do exactly what happened with Mark Colombo, guys. Remember Colombo? He got injured with the Bears, high first round pick, and the career-ending injury. Our doctors get in there and look at this guy and do that and that, and they end up finding out this guy can play. They rehab him, he comes back and he plays, and we get like a borderline Pro Bowl player who played with us for a few years and was a monster. If we can do something like that, and that's a big if, but if we can, that'll really be a big, big, important piece. So that's one of the things I'm surprised no one's talking about, because he was a second-round draft pick just a couple years ago. It's not like he was a second-round draft pick 8 years ago. This guy was a second-round draft pick a couple years ago. So, once again, I see what's happening in the National Football League. I don't think our 3-4 was, up to standards. We were trying to force feed guys into playing. We got really good corners. You guys are going to be so happy with number 24, Morris Claiborne, next year, in the next couple of years. Brandon Carr, you're going to be so happy with them. I still want to see Barry Church. And I think Matt Johnson, I know I probably shouldn't even be saying his name right now. Cowboy fans probably so disappointed with him. I think Matt Johnson's going to end up taking over for Gerald Sensabaugh next year. So when you start seeing those guys on defense, they have to adjust better. We got to get better. We're an athletic team. If you think Bruce Carter and Sean Lee look good in the 3-4, wait till you see these guys in the 4-3. They're going to be all over the field. If you go back to that Atlanta Falcons game and you watch Bruce Carter run down Julio Jones, and everybody saw Julio Jones run a 4-3 with a fractured foot at the Combine, you go watch Bruce Carter, and if you haven't seen it, If you missed that game, we lost that game. I got it. I understand that. You go back and watch that one play, and you will understand the athleticism that Bruce Carter has. Or go back and watch his high school tape where he's running down Tyrod Taylor on the sidelines, running him down. That's a tremendous type of ability that a lot of 4-3 teams don't have. So he'll play the weak side and run down all the run plays. Now these guys got to stay healthy, but that's what you hope for. And we'll need that. We'll need that athleticism because the NFC East is about to get faster with Chip Kelly taking over for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a speed, up-tempo offense. He runs the football, whether it's the quarterback position, whether it's the running back position, this guy's running the football. To me, I want to see, and I had my boy at Sideline Chatter bring this to my attention, that this was what he would like to do. And I agree with it because I was the biggest fan. He's an Eagle fan. By the way, Sideline Chatter, that's his Twitter handle. Dennis Dixon is a name out there that the Eagles could look at. And I said this. These quarterbacks that are playing now in the National Football League, or the style of quarterbacks that are busting onto the scene, I wonder if the zone read offense and listen, Vince Young is going to get a phone call. These quarterbacks that are mobile, that can do that, that's what they did in college. That's what Vince Young did in college. He's going to get a phone call. Now, he was left for dead pretty much by the National Football League. Nobody's been talking about Vince Young. But you know what? His phone's going to ring because other coaches are going to say, I can coach that kid to do that. So, it makes me wonder, though. Because you remember the year, the quarterback, when Achilles Smith and all these guys came up. Guys like Achilles Smith, he'd have flourished today. Michael Bishop would have flourished today. Cordell Stewart, he would have flourished today. I mean, some of us are delusional when we think about some of these guys. We say, oh, they were busts, they were bums. Man, these guys, some of these coaches didn't have the wherewithal to coach these kids. The coaching wasn't as good as it was back then. You had a bunch of bust quarterbacks. Now, how rare is it that somebody has a bust quarterback in the National Football League? When's the last time somebody, okay, Jamarcus Russell, and you can talk about Ryan Lee, but these quarterbacks that are coming out now, they're playing. I mean, I'm not talking about 7th rounders. I'm talking about 1st, 2nd rounders. These guys are going to play 3rd rounders because coaches know how to coach and they understand the game. So, trust me, Achilles Smith, these guys, Michael Bishop, them guys are just born 15, 20 years before they were supposed to be because they could have played this today. And if you don't think so, then you're not watching the game and watching what they're doing. They could throw the ball. Maybe the game was a little too fast for them, but let me tell you something. You want to slow the game up? Run that zone stuff that Russell Wilson's running. Run that RG3 offense that they're running. These guys, Cam Newton, they know how to slow the game down. You can't rush and run and do what you want to do with these guys back there at the quarterback position. So those changes at the quarterback is also another reason to change. Watching the quarterback change, you're going to see the kid Colin Kaepernick. You're going to see him. He's the most dangerous of all of them right now, and you'll see a little bit of him, and you're going to see these guys on. If you look into the future, it's not looking good for us as Cowboy fans because there's a lot of teams that are better than us that aren't even playing tomorrow, Sunday. So when you look at what we're going to have to do, we're going to want to grab somebody. We're going to want to grab a guy that can listen. You got to, in order to win in the National Football League, it's been called a copycat league. So everybody else is winning with it. Now I know Brady's still standing upright, and I know Matt Ryan still standing upright. But you know what? There's a lot of running quarterbacks that'll be busting on the scene, these young kids. So a lot of mobile quarterbacks. So and they got good arms. So they're not just running, but they have great arms. So it'll be interesting to see how our 4-3 defense starts to handle some of the changes that are going on. What do you guys think about Chip Kelly? What do you believe in his? Do you believe in his offense? Do you believe in the players that he has now? Does it fit what he likes to do? What do you think he'll do with Michael Vick? This is what I noticed. I listened to the Chip Kelly press conference. I'll only be brief on this. I listened to Chip Kelly's press conference, and he was very, very corporate. All of his questions were answered. Well, we'll take a look-see approach. I got to look over the whole roster. The one thing I noticed, and I like to look, I always like to look and zone into things. The one time he didn't get corporate and he stepped out and became a person and showed emotion was when he talked about Nick Foles. They asked him about Michael Vick, and he said, well, we're going to look over the roster. We're going to see what we got to do. Everybody's going to be evaluated. Someone asked him about Nick Foles, and he gave a glowing review of Nick Foles. He said, we played Nick Foles, and we kept hitting him and hitting him, and that kid just kept getting up. He's a tough son of a gun. I studied him. I recruited him. I followed him. He said, the guy's accurate as he just was glowing about Nick Foles. So he didn't glow about anybody else. So he did say he talked to a couple people, a couple of the players before he got there. I bet you I can guess the couple he talked to based off his interview. He talked to, first and foremost, LaShawn McCoy. Probably told him, listen, you better have your canteen with you because I'm going to run you like a dog. And that's probably what LaShawn McCoy wanted to hear. And he probably talked to Nick Foles. I will bet you, just based off of me listening to his interview, everybody else he kind of just, we'll look and see. We'll see what we got. I still got to look at the film. I got to look at this and look at that. But it'd be interesting to see. I would like to see that infusion of speed and his style. Likes to run a lot of, up-tempo offense, like not a lot of going right to the ball. See what kind of offensive lineman he has, if they can handle that fast-paced, running, no huddling and stuff like that. But anyway, guys, I wanted to give you something. I was trying to do something with the playoffs. The draft. I will talk playoffs real quick. I like both teams in both both teams on both sides of the bracket. It's a pick'em, two pick'em games, but I think that the Falcons at home are a tough out, and I think that they'll beat the 49ers. It's funny. Everybody says to me, and I got in this argument with a buddy of mine in a barbershop the other day. They told me that this is such a defensive league and defense wins championships. And every time I look at a score in this playoffs, I'm seeing 30-something points. 38, 35, 38, 35. And I told him a couple weeks ago, I said, I'll stick with, give me offense. I'll take my chances. I'm still stubborn. You can have your defenses. Give me a good offense, and I'll see what happens against your defense. I'm just stubborn because these teams are all scoring 30 now. And I think that's changing too. That's the evolution is changing. When you got these quarterbacks that are responsible for 400 and 500 yards in a game by themselves, that's the evolution. So, we might change our approach with defense wins championships. We might change that. So, anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Let me give my courtesy shout-outs to my boy Dwayne Green. You can hit him up at Mossberg, M-O-Z-Z-B-E-R-G. Also, Roy Moss, Sideline Chatter. You can hit him up on YouTube at Roy Moss 75. So, guys, once again, I'm out of here. Let me make my pick first. My bad. I'm gonna take the Falcons, and I'm gonna say that Tom Brady's gonna get to another Super Bowl. I think they're gonna beat Ray Lewis and put them out of their misery. That team's been running on fumes for a while. I do give Ray Lewis and have the utmost respect for him as a football player. He demonstrates every single thing that any player you would ever want, any coach would ever want, any player, any teammate would ever want on the field. But I'm going to give it to and say that when I wake up or Monday morning or Sunday night, it'll be the Falcons in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And it'll be an offensive explosion. So, guys, we'll talk again. Love you all. Thanks for listening. Please hit likes. Please comment. Send me an email if you want, bootsports@yahoo.com. Thank you for listening. Good night, everybody.